you're in final interviews and you're using the STAR framework to help you answer questions, and you have nailed it. You have a defined situation, very clear task, aggressive actions, and a massive result. You feel really good about your answer. But I'm here to tell you, as a former recruiter, you may not have nailed it, because if you aren't talking about how you came up with that massive result, not just the actions, but your thought process behind the actions. Well, if you're looking at senior manager, director, or VP roles, being a manager of actions, that's just not enough for them. What has happened is you are actually a black box. Yeah, a massive result, that's great. And, that's just really table stakes at this level. There are going to be a lot of your competitors with great results as well. What they're going to be looking for at this level is to know your thought process. How did you get that result? Because leadership isn't about following a process. It's about looking at options and understanding why you would choose, option A over option B. That's what they want to know about you. That is what de-risks you in the hiring process. So today we're going to talk about how to use that STAR method more effectively. I want to talk about the 3 big questions that the hiring team is looking at when they're making a decision about you. Now, most people start and end on the first question, which is, what is the immediate situation? What does need to be fixed right now? And often that is what this story is about. And as I said, that's okay to start with that, but you shouldn't end with that, because in the hierarchy of decision making, that's where your first level managers are. They are firefighting a particular problem, and they're looking to just address that problem. But when you go to mid-level management, you're higher level. You're not just looking at that problem, you're looking at bigger problems. And that's why you need to think in that decision-making logic about how this decision impacts the enterprise as a whole. Now, that can be really the whole organization, or it could be your department, somebody else's department, but you're thinking of it not just as a finite problem, but as a bigger issue that has a lot of ramifications. Because if you are solving a problem in one direction, you may be causing problems in other directions. And so the person who is evaluating you wants to understand that you are aware of what that is, and that as part of your logic, you're taking that into account. Now, the third part of this that's really important is not only that you are addressing the problem, that you're looking at it enterprise-wise, but that you also understand that there are trade-offs between what you decide to do. What you say no to is as important as what you say yes to. That you are understanding risk, that you're understanding long-term ramifications of your decisions, and that you have a decision-making process that helps you understand all those pieces, so that you can come up with a solution that may not be the absolute best, but it is the best for this particular situation and its impact on the organization. So when you follow the STAR framework, it's really important that you include your decision-making process in these 3 areas in your answer, because I can guarantee you, having been on the other side of the interview table, that is what your hiring team is going to be listening for. If you enjoy this information, I always appreciate you hitting that like button, and please subscribe to my channel. It really helps. Now let's talk about some examples so you can understand what I'm speaking about. Now, here would be a common example for somebody who is really at a supply chain manager level. we had some inventory issues that I needed to take care of. There were port delays that were causing our inventory not to get to our warehouse in time. So I brought the logistics team together and we looked at different air rates that we could use. And we decided to do that so that we could get our inventory into the warehouses in time for the holiday rush. Okay, now it is solving a problem for sure, but one could ask, and the hiring team is going to think about this, well, that was a pretty expensive solution to that problem. How did that impact the enterprise as a whole? Was there other solutions? See, you missed that part. So what your decision making is right now is a black box for them. They don't understand if you were in a similar situation in their organization, how would you handle it? So you have actually made more risk for yourself as opposed to de-risking yourself by being able to explain this. Let's change that answer so it's more encompassing of your decision logic. So you might say something like this. We had a port delay that was a serious issue of getting our inventory to our warehouses for Q4 for the holiday rush. So option A was to air freight everything so that we could get it on time. Now, the issue with option A was that was going to be extremely expensive. It was going to kill our margins and our profitability for Q4. Another alternative was that for our big box retailers, what we did was we decided to airship to them because of their visibility. They were huge clients. And for everybody else, we decided to go to a secondary port. Yes, it was going to delay their shipments. That we understood was a risk, but it was less of a risk for the smaller clients that we had than for our long-term, our very big clients. So yes, there was some erosion of margin, but we did protect the P&L for Q4. That answer shows more of your decision making. You talk about options, you talk about the impact on the P&L. You give more confidence that as a leader, you're thinking about all of these things. Now let's talk about the answer for the VP level. Now you've got to elevate it further and understand more of the enterprise risk, because directors, yeah, they have strategic vision for sure, but they're going to concentrate more on budgets, on P&L. What the VP is going to also look at is your business model and the risk to this from the decisions you make. So a VP, when they're talking about this situation, here's how their decision-making process might be. Well, when we realized there was going to be a port delay, I got together with the head of sales and our CFO because I didn't see this only as a logistics problem. It was also going to be a potential business problem long term, because I knew that we had some contract negotiations with some of our big box retailers coming up. And looking at our 3-year plan, it was so important that we retain those clients. So looking at the situation, it wasn't only about saving money for the organization. It was making sure we maintained our competitive advantage. And that involved around these big box retailers and our trust in us. So we decided as a group that the problem is more of a retention problem than actually a logistics problem. And so what I decided to do was go ahead and look at ways to get that inventory in our warehouses on time for those clients using the air freight option. And yes, it was going to have a hit on our margin, our P&L, but long term, we knew that we could retain those clients, which was going to make a big difference in our organization and our long-term profitability. Now see how that one is even elevated. You're looking at not only the budgets, but you're looking at how it's going to impact your competitive position. You're talking about collaboration, so you have the head of sales, you have the CFO. You're talking about the roadmap, so you're looking not just immediately, but in the future. And you're also talking about the least bad options, because in a lot of situations, none of the options are good. but you have to choose the one that is the least bad for the situation your organization is in. That shows leadership because anyone can follow a process. But for you, it was not following a process. It was using your intuition, it was using your expertise to understand all the variables and to come up with a solution that was the best for your organization. What I need you to do is now go through your star stories. And I want to have you ask yourself these questions to help you tease out that decision-making process. Now, question one is, lots of times in a situation, there are a lot of bad options. Decide what was some of the least bad options that you ended up rejecting in this process. And I'll be honest with you, if there were no least bad options, then this is really not a leadership example and you should not use it. The second thing is, who did you have to say no to? Probably there were some people in the organization that wanted you to do something differently, but leadership is saying no. So who were those people and how did you say no? And the third thing is, often you're dealing with a situation that has incomplete information. And if this situation had 20% less data for you to work with, what would you possibly have changed? This goes to show how your intuition and your expertise comes into play as you're making decisions. Think about these three things and add that to your answer. I know that it will elevate it to something that the hiring team will be very anxious to hear. This is the difference between getting the offer and being the also-ran in an interview process. And oftentimes, you get out of an interview hitting the situation, the task, the action, the result, the old way, and thinking you did really well. I want you to think differently. I want you to add more to your answers when you're looking at that senior manager, director, or VP position, because the way that you were doing it before was not enough. And that could be why you're not getting the offer. If you need help with your interview prep, I offer many different types of services, and you can find more about that in the description box.